In the heart of busy Accra, everyone knew his name, Mr. Jabari Okoro, the youngest billionaire in the city and the most feared man in business. Once he was charming, unstoppable and full of life. But after the car crash that took his fiancée and left him in a wheelchair, everything changed. He stopped smiling. He stopped trusting. His mansion became cold and quiet, and his temper became legend. No one dared to cross him. Every week, a new assistant would start on Monday, and quit by Friday, sometimes in tears, sometimes in fear. Jabari would throw files, shout orders, and fire people without blinking. "I don't need sympathy," he would snap. "I need competence." The staff had a running joke. No assistant had ever lasted more than 5 days. Until one morning everything changed. A young woman named Amakuti walked through the grand glass doors of Jabari's mansion, her hair pulled neatly back and her eyes calm but determined. The guards looked at her like she was walking into a lion's den. The housekeepers whispered bets behind her back, 2 hours, maybe 3. But Amma didn't flinch. She handed her resume to the butler and said quietly, "Tell Mr. Okoro I'm here for the position." When she finally faced Jabari, his voice was sharp as glass. "You know who I am?" he asked. "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes. "And I'm not here to fear you. I'm here to work." For the first time in a long while, Jabari didn't know what to say. As she turned to start her duties, one of the maids whispered, "She won't last till lunch." Amma smiled softly and replied, "I've handled worse storms." None of them knew it yet, but this woman was about to change everything. From the moment Amma walked into Jabari's office, he made it clear, this was not going to be easy. He didn't believe in kindness, and he didn't believe in giving chances. The first day felt like a battlefield. He called her into his office, his voice cold and sharp. "If you think you can handle me, prove it," he said. Then came his impossible list of orders. He sent her across town to fetch files from 3 different buildings, all in different directions, and demanded she be back in under 10 minutes. The drivers shook their heads, saying it couldn't be done, but Amma didn't argue. She grabbed her bag and ran, catching a passing motorbike and weaving through the traffic of Accra like her life depended on it. When she returned, breathless and covered in dust, the files were neatly stacked in her arms. Jabari looked up, slightly surprised, but said nothing. Then he tossed her a 60-page business report and told her to correct every mistake, by memory. Amma spent hours reading, rewriting, cross-checking numbers. Jabari came over and mocked her handwriting. "Even my printer writes better than this," he sneered. When she kept working silently, he laughed. "You're too quiet. That's the problem with people like you. No confidence." But Amma didn't rise to his bait. She just looked at him and said, "Confidence doesn't need noise, sir." That answer froze him for a second. His pride made him snap. "You're fired." She didn't even blink. Calmly, she packed her pen and notebook, looked him in the eye and said, "You'll need me again by tomorrow." Then she walked out. The next morning, Jabari came downstairs expecting an empty desk. But there she was before sunrise. Coffee ready, files arranged, his schedule printed and color-coded. She greeted him politely as if nothing had happened. For the first time in years, Jabari had nothing to say. No insults, no shouting. Just silence. He sat at his desk, staring at her as she typed, her focus steady and unshaken. That morning, something small shifted in him. He didn't admit it out loud, but he respected her, just a little. Amma had done what no one else could. She stayed. And for the first time in his cold, bitter world, Jabari Okoro began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had finally met his match. The night the storm hit, the sky over Accra roared like it was angry at the world. Thunder rolled, lightning flashed across the windows of Jabari's mansion, and the rain came down so hard it drowned out every other sound. The power suddenly went out, leaving the house in complete darkness. The staff had already gone home and Amma, who stayed late to finish some reports, grabbed a flashlight and started checking if everything was safe. As she passed Jabari's room, she heard a loud thud, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. Her heart jumped. She pushed the door open and saw him on the ground beside his wheelchair, breathing hard, his jaw tight with pain and frustration. He had been trying to move from his chair to the bed when the lights went out. For a second she froze. Not out of fear, but because she saw something in him she'd never seen before. Vulnerability. "Don't touch me," he barked, his pride flaring up even as he struggled to lift himself. But Amma didn't listen. She knelt beside him, steady and calm, her voice low and firm. "You can either let me help you or stay angry on the floor," she said softly. He looked up at her. No pity in her eyes, no fear, just strength. Slowly, she slid his arm over her shoulder and helped him back into bed, careful but sure-handed. When he finally sat upright, breathing heavily, he stared at her in disbelief. "You don't look at me like I'm broken," he murmured. Amma smiled faintly and said, "You're not broken, Mr. Okoro. You're just sitting down while others stand. That's not weakness. It's just a different view." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The storm raged outside, but inside that dark room, something quiet and powerful passed between them. She adjusted his blanket, picked up the fallen glass of water, and placed it on the table beside him. "Good night, sir," she said softly, then turned to leave. But Jabari couldn't sleep that night. He lay there in the silence, replaying her words over and over. "You're just sitting down while others stand." No one had ever said anything like that to him before. No one had seen him as a man instead of a broken body. And as the rain faded into dawn, Jabari realized that for the first time since the crash, someone had truly seen him. 3 weeks had passed, and Amma was still there. Everyone in Jabari's mansion was shocked. No one had ever lasted that long. The housekeepers whispered behind her back, their voices dripping with jealousy and suspicion. "She's only pretending to be nice," one said. "She's after his money," another added, shaking her head. "Mark my words, she'll disappear once she gets what she wants." Amma heard the gossip every day as she passed through the long marble halls, but she never replied. She just smiled politely, kept her head down and continued working. She arrived before everyone else and left long after they were gone. She organized Jabari's files, managed his schedule, handled angry clients with grace, and never once complained. Jabari pretended not to care. When his cousin Kweku, who also managed parts of his business, came by one morning, he leaned close and said, "Be careful, cousin. These girls know how to play nice. They act innocent, but they're after something." Jabari nodded slightly, though deep down he wasn't sure. There was something about Amma that didn't fit the pattern. She never tried to impress him. She didn't flirt, didn't beg for favors. She just worked quietly, almost too quietly. That night, he found himself watching her through the office camera feed, not out of mistrust but curiosity. He saw her leave the mansion and walk all the way to the bus stop, even though she had access to the company cars. He noticed how she carried a small bag, worn out from years of use. The next day, one of the drivers mentioned seeing her stop at a pharmacy and buy medicine with her own money. When Jabari asked who it was for, the driver said, "Her mother, sir. She's been sick for a while." Something shifted in him then. He began to see her differently, not as an employee, but as a woman fighting her own quiet battles. He started noticing the way she smiled when she greeted people, the way she brought him tea without being asked, the way she never looked at him with pity, only respect. That realization scared him. Jabari Okoro, the man everyone feared, found himself waiting for her footsteps in the hall, for her soft voice saying, "Good morning, sir." His heart, once frozen in anger, began to thaw, and he hated it. Because for the first time since his accident, he wasn't in control of his own emotions. Amakuti had walked into his mansion as an assistant, but somehow, she was beginning to reach a part of him no one else ever could. It was late one evening when Amma stayed behind in Jabari's study, sorting through piles of old company papers. She was organizing contracts and reports like she always did, until a thin brown folder slipped out from the back of a drawer. The label caught her eye. "Okoro Accident, Confidential." She hesitated. For a moment she thought about putting it back, but something inside her, curiosity mixed with concern, made her sit down and open it carefully. Inside were police reports, hospital notes, and old newspaper clippings. Her eyes widened as she read. The headline screamed, "Billionaire Jabari Okoro crashes his car after heated argument with fiancée Naomi Asare." But as Amma read the details, the truth painted a very different story. Naomi had been the one driving that night. She had been speeding after an argument, and when the car skidded off the road, Jabari had pushed her out just before the impact. He saved her life, but he was the one left paralyzed. Still, somehow, Naomi told the world he was responsible. She said his anger caused the crash. She even held a teary press conference while Jabari was in surgery. Overnight, his reputation was destroyed. The man who once inspired millions was suddenly the villain of his own story. Amma's hands trembled as she turned the pages. She understood now why he was so cold, so angry. It wasn't arrogance, it was pain. He had lost everything: his fiancée, his dignity, and his trust in people. Just then the door slammed open. Jabari was there, his expression dark and furious. "What do you think you're doing?" he thundered, wheeling toward her. Amma froze, her heart pounding. I found these while cleaning your files," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to pry." His voice rose. "You had no right to read that." The room felt charged, like lightning was about to strike. He snatched the folder from her hands, his eyes burning. "You think you can just walk in here and dig up my past? You know nothing about me, Amma." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but steady. "You're right. I don't know everything, but I know pain when I see it. I know what it's like to lose something and pretend you're fine." "Stop," he snapped, his voice cracking. "You don't understand." Amma stepped closer, her eyes soft but firm. "Then tell me what's right, Jabari. Living angry forever, blaming everyone until there's no one left to care." For the first time he went completely silent. Her words hit deeper than he wanted to admit. His jaw tightened, but his eyes began to glisten. He turned his chair away, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. Amma whispered, "You didn't deserve what happened to you, but you also don't deserve to keep punishing yourself." Then she walked toward the door, leaving him alone with the truth, and with the storm she had just stirred inside him. That night, Jabari Okoro didn't sleep. The image of Amma standing there, unafraid, echoing those words, "Then tell me what's right, living angry forever?" replayed in his mind until sunrise. And for the first time he wondered if it was time to finally stop fighting the world and start healing. The morning started like any other, calm, quiet, almost too perfect. Amma arrived early, smiling as always, ready to go through Jabari's schedule and prepare his meeting files. But she could feel something strange in the air. The staff avoided her eyes, whispering as she passed. When she entered the office, Jabari didn't look up from his desk. His expression was stone cold. Then Kweku walked in, pretending to look grave and serious, holding a stack of documents. "Cousin," he said, "I didn't want to believe this, but we found a trail, money missing from the company accounts. And it's all under Amma Kuti's name." He placed the papers in front of Jabari. Amma's heart dropped. "That's not true," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "I've never touched any company money." Kweku sighed loudly, acting like it pained him. "Amma, we trusted you. Why would you do this?" he said, shaking his head. Jabari flipped through the papers, and there it was. A transfer under her name, signed digitally from her account. It looked real, too real. His eyes darkened. "Get her out," he said quietly. Amma's throat tightened. "Sir, please, this is a setup. I swear I didn't do this." But before she could say more, 2 security guards appeared at the door. They took her by the arms as she pleaded, "Mr. Okoro, please look at me. You know me better than this." Jabari turned away, his face hard. He couldn't even look at her. As the guards dragged her down the hallway, the other staff peeked from corners, whispering, "I knew it." She fooled him. Amma didn't fight back. She just looked over her shoulder one last time. "I didn't betray you," she said softly. Then she was gone. The mansion felt colder that evening. Jabari sat in his study long after everyone left, staring at the empty desk where Amma used to sit. He told himself she was just like everyone else, greedy, deceptive, untrustworthy. But somehow his chest ached with guilt. He couldn't shake the image of her tearful eyes as she said, "You know me better than this." Hours later he reached for his files and noticed something small on the floor, a silver flash drive. He picked it up and plugged it into his laptop, expecting nothing. But what appeared on the screen made his blood run hot. There were hidden documents, real bank transfers, emails, and security footage. Every file pointed straight to Kweku. Amma had been collecting proof all along, not for herself, but to protect the company, to protect him. She must have dropped the flash drive when security dragged her out. Jabari's hands trembled as he stared at the screen. Every emotion, anger, shame, regret, hit him at once. He had pushed away the only person who truly cared, the only one who stayed when everyone else ran. He slammed his fist on the desk. "Kweku," he growled under his breath, his voice low and deadly. "You'll pay for this." But the worst pain wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing that Amma's loyalty had been real all along, and he had broken it. The next morning, the entire company gathered for a big board meeting. The air in the room was thick with tension. Kweku sat confidently at the head of the table, acting like nothing had happened. He smiled, shook hands, and spoke smoothly about cleaning up the company after Amma's so-called betrayal. The other executives nodded, unaware that the real storm was about to arrive. Then the glass doors swung open. The sound of Jabari's wheelchair echoed through the room. Every head turned. He looked different, calm but dangerous. His eyes were sharp, burning with quiet rage. Kweku's smile faltered. "Cousin, you're early," he said nervously. Jabari didn't respond. He wheeled straight to the front of the room, opened his laptop, and connected it to the big screen. "Meeting's over," he said coldly. "Except for one thing." The staff fell silent. He clicked play on a video file, and the screen showed security footage. Kweku sneaking into Jabari's office at night, transferring money from company accounts, and placing fake documents under Amma's name. Gasps filled the room. Kweku's face turned pale. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. Jabari cut him off sharply. "It looks like you framed the only person in this company who was loyal." He turned the screen toward him. "You used my trust to destroy someone who never once betrayed me." Kweku tried to stand, mumbling excuses, but Jabari's voice thundered across the room. "Security!" 2 guards appeared at the door instantly. "Escort Mr. Kweku Okoro out," Jabari ordered. Kweku panicked, his charm gone. "Jabari, please. Listen, I can explain." But Jabari didn't even look at him. "You explained enough when you lied," he said quietly. The guards took Kweku by the arms as he shouted, "You'll regret this," before being dragged out in shame. When the doors closed, Jabari turned to his employees. The room was dead silent. "Amma Kuti," he said, his voice strong but emotional, "was innocent. She was set up by a snake hiding among us. And I let it happen." His voice broke slightly, but he continued, "From now on no one, and I mean no one, disrespects the woman who stood when the rest ran." A few of the staff lowered their heads, ashamed. They remembered how they had gossiped, how they had judged her without proof. Jabari looked around the table, his tone softer now. "She believed in this company even when I didn't believe in myself. We owe her more than an apology. We owe her our respect." Then he turned his wheelchair toward the window, looking out at the city below. For the first time in a long time, his voice carried not just authority, but something deeper, pride, regret, and hope. "Find her," he said quietly. "Bring Amma home." Weeks passed after the confrontation, but Amma didn't return to Jabari's mansion. She had found a small job at a community library, helping children read after school. Life was quieter there, peaceful, safe, but every time her phone buzzed, her heart still skipped. She never said it out loud, but a part of her missed him. The man who had once terrified her had changed before her eyes, and that memory stayed with her. Then one evening, she received an unexpected call. It was Jabari's assistant, his new one. "Mr. Okoro would like to invite you to dinner," the woman said politely. Amma hesitated. "Dinner? For what?" The answer was simple. "He wants to speak with you personally." That night, Amma stood outside his mansion again, the same place she'd been dragged out of in humiliation. But this time, the guards greeted her respectfully. When the doors opened, she saw him, Jabari, dressed neatly in a dark suit, his expression calm but nervous, like a schoolboy waiting for an exam result. The dining table was set beautifully, candles flickering between them. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly as she sat down. Amma smiled a little. "Neither was I." For a moment they ate in silence. Then Jabari put down his fork and looked straight at her. "Amma," he said, his voice low, "I fired everyone who tried to run this company for me. But I can't fire you from my thoughts." She froze, her heart pounding. "Mr. Okoro," she began, but he shook his head. "I'm not asking for pity," he continued. "I don't want sympathy. I'm asking for partnership in business and maybe in life. You saw me at my worst and you stayed. You saw me broken, and you reminded me I wasn't." Amma felt her throat tighten. "You don't have to say all this," she whispered. "I was just doing my job." He smiled faintly. "Then you were the best job I ever had." His words made her laugh through her tears. She looked at him, not the cold, feared billionaire everyone once talked about, but a man who had finally found his heart again. Silence hung between them for a moment, warm and full of meaning. Then Jabari reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly. "Amma Kuti," he said gently, "will you stay by my side, not as my employee but as my equal?" Amma stared at him, speechless. Her eyes glistened as she whispered, "You really mean that?" He nodded. "With everything I have left." And for the first time since the night of the crash, Jabari Okoro's smile wasn't forced. It was real. The mornings at the therapy center always started the same way. The sound of machines humming, the scent of disinfectant, and the soft voice of Amma saying, "One more step, Jabari. Just one more." Ever since that dinner, things between them had changed. Jabari wasn't just her boss anymore. He was her friend, her partner in healing, though neither of them had dared to name what they truly felt. Every morning she came early, pushing his wheelchair into the gym, cheering him through pain that would have broken most people. The doctors had said it again and again. "Mr. Okoro, you will never stand." But Amma never accepted that. "You stood for your company," she told him once. "You stood for truth, you can stand again." And so Jabari tried. Every day. Even when his arms trembled, when sweat ran down his face, when anger made him want to throw the crutches across the room, she stayed. She held his hand when no one else believed he could rise. Then one quiet morning something changed. Jabari had been silent during therapy, eyes focused, jaw clenched. The therapist adjusted his braces and said gently, "Let's try, sir." He nodded slowly. Amma stood right in front of him, her palms open, her voice calm but strong. "Look at me, Jabari. You've done harder things than this. Just breathe. And stand." For a moment nothing happened. His arms shook. His body refused. But then a shift. His legs, long thought lifeless, trembled under his weight. He groaned in pain but didn't stop. Inch by inch, with Amma whispering, "You can do this." He pushed himself up until the impossible happened. He was standing. The therapist froze. The nurses gasped. One even covered her mouth in shock. Jabari's body trembled, his breath coming hard and fast, but he was up, on his own 2 feet. Amma's eyes filled with tears, and before she could stop herself, she laughed, that kind of laugh that comes from deep joy and disbelief. She clapped her hands over her mouth, crying and smiling all at once. Jabari looked at her through tears of his own. "You said I wasn't broken," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You were right." Amma stepped closer, gently placing her hand over his heart. "You were never broken," she said softly. "You just needed to remember who you were." And there, in that bright hospital room, the man who once lost everything stood tall again, not just on his legs but in spirit. Everyone watching knew they'd just witnessed a miracle. But for Amma, it wasn't a miracle. It was love, pure, quiet, and powerful enough to make a man walk again. Months later, the grand ballroom was filled with light, laughter, and the hum of hundreds of guests gathered for Jabari's charity gala, a fundraiser for spinal injury survivors. The man once known as the recluse in the wheelchair now stood tall on stage, a quiet confidence glowing in his eyes. The world had come to see the billionaire who defied the odds. But for Jabari, tonight wasn't about showing strength. It was about sharing what truly saved him. Amma stood beside him, elegant in a simple gown, trying to hide her nervous smile. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and yet Jabari's gaze stayed on her, the one person who had never seen him as broken. When it was time for him to speak, the room fell silent. His voice was steady, warm, and filled with truth. "A few years ago," he began, "I lost more than my ability to walk. I lost hope. I thought strength meant never needing anyone. But then someone showed me that real strength doesn't roar. It shows up quietly, calm and steady, and stands by you when everyone else leaves." His words touched something deep in the crowd. You could hear people sniffing softly, eyes glistening in the glow of chandeliers. Then Jabari turned toward Amma, his smile gentle but proud. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "meet the new CEO of Okoro Holdings, and the woman who reminded me how to live again." The room erupted into applause, loud, joyful, unstoppable. Amma froze, tears flooding her eyes as Jabari reached for her hand. Cameras flashed like fireworks, capturing the moment that would make headlines across the world. The wheelchair billionaire who walked again and found love. As the cheers grew louder, Jabari looked at her. His voice, barely a whisper, now meant only for her. "You didn't just help me stand, Amma. You gave me back my life." For the first time since that terrible night of the crash, Jabari smiled, a real, free, unguarded smile. And beside him, Amma smiled too, knowing the legend of the wheelchair billionaire had only just begun.